You know the story. The unsinkable ship, the iceberg, the 1,500 lives lost in the freezing Atlantic. But what if the ship that sank on April 15th, 1912, was not the Titanic at all? April 1909, Belfast, Northern Ireland. In the massive Harland and Wolff shipyard, the largest in the world, two ships are being built side by side. Sister ships, identical in almost every way. The first Olympic, the second Titanic. They were the crown jewels of the White Star Line, owned by one of the most powerful men in the world, American banker J.P. Morgan. Each ship was 882 feet long, 46,000 tons, 11 stories tall, the largest moving objects ever built by human hands. They were not just ships. They were statements. They told the world, we have conquered the sea. But from the very beginning, one of these sisters had a problem. September 1911. The Olympic set sail from Southampton to New York on one of her early voyages. And then disaster. The Olympic collides with the British Royal Navy warship HMS Hawke in the salt waters off the southern coast of England. The damage is severe. A massive hole torn into the Olympic's starboard side. Two of her propeller shafts twisted and bent. She limps back to Belfast, back to Harland and Wolff, back to the shipyard where she was born. And here is where the story gets complicated. The court ruling on the collision finds the Olympic and therefore the White Star Line at fault. No insurance payout. The repair bill falls entirely on J.P. Morgan's company. Hundreds of thousands of pounds. Gone. And while the Olympic sits in dry dock bleeding money, the Titanic waits. Nearly complete. Her maiden voyage already announced. Tickets already sold. The world already watching. J.P. Morgan had a problem. And powerful men, in dark rooms, have a history of finding solutions. This is where the conspiracy begins. The theory believed by millions around the world to this day goes like this. The Olympic was too damaged to ever be truly profitable again. Structurally compromised. A financial burden dressed in steel. But the Titanic? Brand new. Fully insured, sitting right there in the same shipyard. The two ships were nearly identical. Same length, same height, same interior layout. Workers who built both ships said that from a distance you could barely tell them apart. So what if someone asked in a quiet room, what if we switched them? Send the damaged Olympic out as the Titanic. Sail her into the Atlantic. Arrange a controlled accident. Collect the insurance. And start again. The numbers seem to make sense. The opportunity seemed to exist, and the two ships were together in Belfast in March 1912, just weeks before the Titanic's scheduled departure. It would be the greatest insurance fraud in history, and 1,500 people would pay for it with those who believed the switch point to several things. First up, P. Morgan himself. He had booked a suite on the Titanic's maiden voyage, one of the most powerful men in the world, and at the last minute he cancelled. He said he was unwell. He was photographed 2 days later in perfect health on the French Riviera with a group of friends. Second, other wealthy passengers cancelled too. Henry Clay Frick, Robert Bacon, all booked, all cancelled at the last minute, all survived. Third, a small but documented difference between the two ships. The number and spacing of the portholes on the forward hull. Photographs taken before the sailing show a configuration that some researchers claim matches the Olympic, not the Titanic. Fourth, the Olympic was broken up for scrap in 1935, almost entirely, as if someone wanted to make sure the evidence disappeared. Passenger 1 asterisk asterisk asterisk, she doesn't feel right tonight. The sea is too calm. Asterisk. Passenger 2 asterisk asterisk asterisk, she's unsinkable. Stop worrying. The sea was indeed unnaturally calm that night, which is exactly why the iceberg was invisible until it was too late. April 14th. 1912, 11:40 p.m. The North Atlantic Ocean, 400 miles south of Newfoundland. The temperature is -2 degrees Celsius. The lookouts in the crow's nest have no binoculars. They were left behind in Southampton. At 11:39 p.m., lookout Frederick Fleet sees something in the darkness ahead. He picks up the telephone to the bridge and says 6 words. Frederick Fleet asterisk 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 iceberg. Right ahead. Asterisk. The officer on the bridge orders hard to starboard. Full stop. Full astern. It is too late. The iceberg scrapes along the starboard side of the ship, below the waterline. Silently, almost gently. From the deck, Passengers feel only a slight shudder. Some do not even wake up. But below, in the hull, 5 of the ship's 16 watertight compartments are flooding. The ship could survive 4, not 5. At 2:20 a.m. on April 15, 2 hours and 40 minutes after impact, the ship slides beneath the surface of the Atlantic Ocean. 1,517 people go with her. The water temperature is -2 degrees. In water that cold, you have 15 minutes before your body stops working. Most lifeboats were only half full. Now here's what the historical record actually tells us. The conspiracy is compelling. It has been believed by millions. Books have been written. Documentaries made. TikTok videos have had hundreds of millions of views. But the evidence does not hold. First, the insurance. The Titanic was worth $7.5 million. It was insured for only $5 million. It was underinsured. An insurance fraud on those numbers would have lost the White Star Line $2.5 million. That is not a motive. That is a disaster on top of a disaster. Second, the scale of the secret. Thousands of workers built both ships. Harland and Wolf's own photographer was moving around the yard constantly, taking photographs of both ships during the weeks they were together. Not a single photograph of a switch has ever been found. Not one worker out of thousands ever came forward to say,